So, ladies and gentlemen, the next challenge is very, very interesting. We do have a problem owner called Institute for Adult Learning. I think for Singaporeans, you are very, very familiar with this institution as well. And their first challenge that they're going to name is very similar to the platform that we are on over here, which is the Zoom webinar, right? So the first problem is actually how to improve access, trust, and effectiveness for online learning. Just to give you guys a bit of context over here. So InLab, managed by Institute for Adult Learning, IAL, is set up to catalyze learning innovation in Singapore's training and adult education sector. So as part of the innovation series, InLab's InnovJam build, test, iterate, and validate the solution, transforming it for commercialization. Now, while Singapore is moving out of the COVID restriction, the pandemic has actually triggered a sudden and rapid transformation in the training and adult education industry, where employees and learners were required to adapt to online formats to continue their learning. Now, while online learning has become a necessity, existing platforms allow trainers to teach and interact with their learners remotely. They have also gradually evolved. However, to allow online learning to remain as a choice of mode of learning, there are certain challenges being faced. So the problem statement here is, how might we actually improve access, trust, and effectiveness of online learning to increase individuals' take-up of online learning over here? So over here, for our problem owner, they're represented by a learning innovator over here named Zach Chiu. So Zach is a learning strategist and an innovation evangelist in the learning and development sector, constantly exploring on developing latest disruptive trends as an enabler in transforming organization learning and training needs to be Industry 4.0 ready. So thank you very much. Let's welcome learning innovator Zach. Hi, Zach.
Hi, Ching Hong.
Hi, wonderful. I can hear you loud and clear. So would you care to introduce yourself a little bit more? No, you're of the perfect volume, actually.
Okay,
sounding really great. I'll
hand
the stage over to Zach. Thank you.
Thank you, Ching Hong. And hi, good afternoon, everyone. Let me actually start with, give you a brief background of IAL. And before that, let me actually do the sharing of the slides. Okay. Do let me know if, let's say, you can't really, take a look at the slide itself. Okay. I believe it should be in the presentation mode.
Yes, it looks perfect now, Zach. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. Okay. Let me actually start off with giving you a brief history of, InLab. InLab is actually, is a division of IAL. IAL is Institute for Adult Learning. So I think a couple of years back, around 3 years back, IAL used to be under SkillsFuture Singapore. So SkillsFuture Singapore, I believe you are very familiar, in terms of actually the SkillsFuture credit auditing. But that is also another part of, of what actually SkillsFuture is doing. It's really the upskilling and reskilling of the workforce in Singapore. So that is actually what, SkillsFuture is looking at. And driving down to IAL itself, right? IAL is the one, if you really do a comparison, it is like, the NIE of MOE. So NIE, what do? They do train teachers. Okay, so IAL itself is also training. But who do we train? We train people who would love to be a trainer. Okay, a trainer in any field that you are looking for. So that is actually what IAL is about. It's actually, to actually, we have actually, all the different programs from a certificate all the way to a master to actually qualify a person who want to be a trainer. Okay, so that is IAL as a short info. Then after that, there's actually this thing called InLab, Innovation Lab. So what does Innovation Lab? So that is actually what I'm actually going to talk about before actually I go and delve into the challenge itself. And I would say that I would rather actually have a brief introduction of its InLab. Then after that, go into all the 3 challenges at one time. So that is easy because it's like just now the DSI itself, right? What we are really looking for is very broad area of challenges that we have defined. So in hope that we can look for a lot of innovative and interesting solution that you can actually help to solve this thing. So that's why it's very broad that we are looking at. Okay. So back to IAL and InLab itself. So InLab stands is the innovation center for the CET sectors. What is CET sectors? CET sectors is actually, you see the bottom right there, is continuing education and training. That is actually the terms that we use for people like you and me. All of us, after our, our uni day, after our, in the way study, the proper study process, then we are actually coming out to, to work. But constantly upskilling and actually reskilling and actually continuing learning is actually something that we are always facing to have, even after 5 or 6 years, even 3 years, or even 10 years after you are actually on doing on the workforce. So continuing upgrading yourself is very important, especially right now. That's why we mentioned about the digital 4.0 everything, and also because of COVID. During the past few years of COVID, we have seen a lot of transformation in terms of actually how organizations learn, in terms of online hybrid learning. Everything is actually where what we have been always focusing and actually advocating for people, for organizations to really to adopt. It has really propelled, and actually organization has really started to actually look into it. So as an innovation center, you see all these 5 main areas. That is what we are. We are there to actually a space for innovation. We have a big space of 2 stories at this Lifelong Learning Institute, which is LLI at Paya Lebar. We have actually a research center. We also facilitate collaboration, and also we are matchmaking expertise. What do we mean by that? I will actually brief you further in terms of how are we going to achieve those initiatives that we have through all this. We call it the Inno series program that we run. Okay. Just now, what Ching Hong has mentioned is that let me actually maybe see whether is there a laser pointer. Okay, laser pointer. Over here, this is actually 3 programs that we mentioned, and these 3 programs, why I'm actually putting it here, because it's like there is money, funding that's been supported. So to put it simple, over here, InnovGem is a $5,000 that we are actually giving. So for InnovGem itself, what is it? What's the purpose? If you know about technology readiness level, TRL level, and if you are really a startup or solution providers, you should actually be quite familiar with TRL level in terms of how ready your technology is, in terms of the whole process, whether you are just from an idea to something like Grab or Carousel, that you are already a commercial product. So that is actually what we are looking at. InnovGen, what we are looking at is actually very early stage, where we are giving up seed funding of $5,000. $5,000, to be honest, it can't do anything. For an organization, it's really as a seed funding for us to push up. So that is actually the whole purpose of us to join this OIP platform, because we are willing to give out this seed funding of $5,000. Not only one, there's actually quite a few of seed funding that we are willing to give out to, for you to really really to ideate this whole thing. Then after that, hopefully you can actually build it into to build a MVP. Of course, this MVP process is a lengthy process. So this MVP, what we are looking at, we will support you along the way. That is actually what Innovation InLab is actually there for, to help you across this whole journey, from just an idea, how to iterate it, how to ideate it, then have to develop into the prototype with the specific organization. So that is what InnovGem is about. So that is actually why we are actually tapping on OIP platform. This is actually our first time, but InnovGem, and we have been around for coming to 6 years. And InnovGem has been running for actually two years or so, in a way that we are actually transforming into a startup grooming a platform for in the learning sectors, in the CET learning sectors. So if you have any ideas that's related to further later the 3 main focus that we are talking about, come and join us. We are actually willing to hear you out and see whether to give you some pointers of whether is it relevant, or do we have we heard of something similar out there that is nothing you have to craft further in terms of your solution. And ideally, if let's say you're solution providers, and why is InnoGem important for you? Because InnoGem will be something, if you are already have existing solution and you want to test and build new add on further features into your solution, InnoGem is a good platform for you to test and iterate it. So that is actually a platform that we actually support, that we give to actually support you along the way. So that is InnoGem. And then there's actually another initiative that we have. We call it InnovPlus over here. And InnovPlus itself, there's also funding, a funding of 200,000. And each year is also happened to be, we are also in the 13th round of InnoPlus this year, this coming round. So InnoPlus itself, what we do is actually we are focusing on the enterprises. We will always collect, it's just like an open innovation platform. We actually collect, all the challenges out there. But unlike IMDA OIP, which is focusing on digital innovation, what we focus on is actually learning innovation. So this learning innovation, we talk about that is actually we will go through this whole, the same process as very similar process of this OIP itself to actually, to make sure that your solution really fits into what the challenge owner have wants. So all this information are actually on our website if you want to know more. But after that, that is actually the secondary of the whole purpose of this whole OIP, because it's like what we want you to do right now is actually, get your idea right first. Make sure the idea is right. Make sure that it's actually of value. There's actually some commercial value of it. Then after that, then maybe we can actually encourage you to join InnoPlus. There's also another initiative that we have. We call it Dev Development. That is actually more for training providers. So it won't be really something relevant. We also have some funding of $5,000 to give, but that one I will skip it because I think that's more relevant for training providers. Okay. And we also have other platform which is actually more like InnoFight and InnoVlog, which is like a fireside chat or a dialogue, a panel dialogue, all these things that we actually organize. So if you want to know more about all our programs over there, that's actually the website. Okay, then let me bring you to this InnoGem itself. So as you can, I believe some of you startup, definitely you will be very familiar with this incubator and accelerator, the journey that you are actually having. So that is actually what we are doing purpose, throughout this whole thing. So right now, what we are trying to do is actually this incubator part, where it's really to test out new ideas. So for early stage startup, or even for startup or for organization or solution providers like you, that you think that you can really further, build on your tech itself or initiative itself, come in to us. We have another program launching soon, accelerator, with another few funding, but I will not talk about that because that is actually, of course, it's like InnoPlus, you have to be ready before you come into this accelerator. Okay. So bring me to these three focus team that we are talking about. And why these three focus team? Remember just now I mentioned that IAL used to be under SkillsFuture Singapore, SSG, and SkillsFuture Singapore, there's this Inland 2.0, which is the directive of SSG to actually improve the CET sectors in terms of their digitalization. Okay, so these three focus area is not something which is IAL come out on its own. It's something which is we work together with SkillsFuture Singapore to identify these three main focus. Okay, online learning, edtech, and remote proctoring. Okay, let's put it into three different aspect of things. Okay, in anything, for example, you and me learn. When we learn, we are working adults. A lot of time when we actually, the amount of time that we have is very precious. So what is it in for me if you want me to learn something new? Okay, what is the KPI? What's the ROI for me? Those are always something which is actually, as an individual, you look for KPI. If you are an organization, what is the ROI that you are looking for? So that is something very practical for you and me. So what we're really looking for is if your solution is something which is something like Apple, which is so sophisticated backend, but as a user, it is very seamless, simple. That will be an ideal solution that you would like to hear from you. But if you are just looking for providing an LMS system that is actually very similar to what 1,000 and others LMS out there, then that might not be anything that is actually of interest to us. Why? Because it's like what we are looking for is like a startup. And for a startup or for any challenges itself, right? What is the challenge? What is the gap that you're trying to fill? That is something that we are looking at. So even for these three main areas, right? Online learning, edtech, and remote proctoring. What is this gap you are trying to fill? And how unique is your solution as compared to those solutions out there? That is something that we are looking for. So online learning, edtech, and remote proctoring, it classified into three main prongs that I'm talking about. Learning design. Learning design is actually one of them. Learning delivery is actually another. And the third is learning assessment. You need design, you need delivery, you need assessment. These three areas. So you can classify into nicely into these three areas. So online learning is actually the learning delivery part of it. Delivery part of it is because it's like right now hybrid. Yes, right now, with the relaxation of, the safety measures, everything, yes, coming back to, more face-to-face. But you and me, face it, we also still prefer, to have a hybrid or, work from home. So that is actually, and that is change how organization assess in terms of the learning component. online learning, if you conduct a Zoom, if you conduct a, you know, a LMS, if you conduct, you know, a short video throughout to actually, you know, for learning, how do you assess in terms of whether the person learned or not? How do you grade all these things? So this is actually, you know, what we are looking for in terms of the learning delivery. Online, yes, through LMS, through whatever other platform, to a chatbot, to a phone, using chatbot, whatever thing, that is something. Yes, you can have all those things. We have seen quite a few, but what is the uniqueness of this thing that we look at? But importantly, is actually how is this solution going to improve the access, trust, and effectiveness of online learning? Because a lot of time, like we mentioned, that's why you see the second liner is actually to improve the individual take-up of online learning. Because like, you know, Coursera, you know, or Udemy, all these things has been around for so long. It is very popular, okay, in the Western, but not in the Asia context. Why is it so? Why is nobody really, the take-up rate of online learning is still very low? So that is something which is how you can make it more effective or how interesting to make it fun for all. Then that is actually the first point. The second point that I'm actually going to talk about is the second one, which is actually, you know, in terms of the learning design. So learning design of it itself is, of course, in terms of actually using technology. So your technology, you can use AI, but what exactly is this AI that you're talking about? Whether is it computer vision, whether is it NLP, what exactly is this, you know, technology that you are talking about? Whether is it a learning management platform, whether is it the LXP, learning experience platform, what exactly are you talking about? How is it relevant for the people out there, relevant for the learners? That is actually what we are looking for. Then thirdly, of course, is the remote proctoring. But it's not just proctoring, it's actually the assessment. With, you know, because it's like we on terms of on-site, you know, assessment. If you are a place where, you know, if let's say you are in the retail or if you are in the, you know, workplace safety and health, how can you make sure in terms of the, you know, the assessment part of it when you're on site can be very well done, that organization can keep track of whether you perform the skill sets or not. That's why what we are looking for over here, because it's like a lot of time in terms of adult learning, is a skill set competency that we are looking at. So this skill-based assessment is something, is how can you better you know, define and actually, you know, really to assess and actually, you know, to make sure that the person performing the task has the right and good enough skill set to make the job done well. So that is actually what we are looking for, these three main areas. So this is, if you want to, of course, it's like in the, you know, in the open innovation platform itself, we have elaborated further in terms of the challenges that we are looking for. Feel free to read that up. Why is that important? Because those are actually, you know, some of the use cases that we have from the past, from all of the enterprises that we are actually engaging with. So that is actually, you know, the challenge that we have. But of course, that is not the only challenge that we are looking for. If you have anything, any solution that is related to these three, you know, challenge teams itself, feel free to write into us, and we can actually, you know, award you with the prize money itself. Okay. So as award model itself, of course, it's at 5,000, as I mentioned earlier. 5,000 will be awarded if, let's say, for you to actually, you know, just to really validate and ideate validate the ideas. Then remaining 10,000 will be awarded when you're actually going to build up this MVP. Okay, so that is actually what we are looking for in terms of actually the award models. Okay, so I think that ends my sharing, very quick and short. Feel free to ask me any question if you have.
Thank you very much, Zach. Welcome. And of course, it's a little bit like Inception today. You come to sort of like a problem-solving platform, and then you realize that, hey, there are a lot of other problem-solving platforms, incubators and accelerators as well. And I love that. I'm sure many of our problem solvers will go over to your platform to take a look at the different challenges, as well as the different possibilities for growth in the adult learning field. And of course, we do welcome any questions from our problem solvers at the moment. I think this is the first time they will actually have to work with 3 different challenges at one go. So maybe let me just reiterate. First of all is how to improve access, trust, and effectiveness for online learning. Or do you mind, Zach, to put up that slide again? You do have that slide with the... I think that would be brilliant for the problem solvers to actually contemplate, to understand. I think these are all very, very interesting problems that we're looking at, very specific challenges. And of course, for the problem solvers, feel free to ask any questions with regards to this. Like Zach has mentioned, online learning is not something that's absolutely brand new, spanking new, right? So it's been around for a while, but how to increase that take up, that is really the question that we're talking about over here. And of course, ed tech and learning technologies, we're looking at how to increase enterprise adoptions for innovative learning technology. I believe Zach has mentioned with the idea of what's the learning objective, what's the KPI, what's the ROI, right? So these are some of the things. And I think the last one especially piqued my interest on the remote proctoring is how do we actually access? Yeah, we could do a quiz online for something that's more academic, but how do we access, say, how do you know how to use the chainsaw when you are sitting at home, for example? So I think this is really interesting. Yeah,
that's the thing. So just to elaborate on the third part, because it's for example, if let's say you are in workplace safety and health. So if in that sector itself, there are, the challenge itself is if you are really doing in terms of scaffolding itself, scaffolding in terms of actually the building structure, there's proper steps for all these things that you need to do. But in terms of doing all these steps, it's not something which is actually you have to really follow step 1, step 2, step 3. Yes, you have to follow in a way, but by doing so, does that mean that you really have a good skill set of understanding of this whole thing? This is actually not something as simple as that. That's what we are actually looking at. So in terms of, yes, you can practice, you can go through the process. Then after that, even if you go through the process, current is actually, you have to be on site. The trainer has to be on site to actually conduct. And by being on site to conduct, there's one whole day to take to have maybe 10 trainees. Right. But how can it be more effective for me to actually really roll it out faster, more effective online learning, or video or VR, AR, all these things? These are actually some of the things we have tried before. So how will it be something that you can actually improve on it, further build on it? That is something we hope that you can actually come in for.
Well, Zach, do you mind sharing an example of a certain skill sets that you guys have probably tried to test before in a different kind of scenario, rather than doing the actual thing? You come up with a sort of a different way to proctor it remotely. Yeah.
Okay. Let me actually give you one example each, huh? So this is actually through our InnoPlus itself, where InnoPlus itself is just like the challenge owner and also the solution provider. So one of the case itself is one of the big hospital in Singapore. In Singapore, there's actually 2 main Sing Health Group and the other, NHG. So one of them, this is one of the big hospital, and it's the emergency department of it. So that is actually the part of, when you are actually at the emergency department, every cases that you come in to assess, people will tell you it's very important. It's very, it's like, wow, it's really, life and death. Correct. Yeah. Then how do you assess as a nurse? So right now, I mean, in the past, they only do it through the experience of this nurse. Okay, there isn't anything which is actually, of an AI component that can actually use it to actually test it. So the winning solution actually use NLP as well as computer vision. So how does it make it actually, there will be scenario created with really, of people saying that with different scenario of all these things. If they actually will say that, okay, I have this, I have that, this is my symptom. Okay, then it would actually test you on how you actually respond. You respond by talking into the solution itself. Then the solution NLP will actually track and get, the keywords that you actually have, as well as track in terms of your, your facial expression and the tonality of it. So those are actually the technology being in place for you to make sure. So even when you talk about it, when you respond, the words that you use, the tone that you use, it will assess and actually see how good you are actually, in terms of your response and whether your response is correct or not. That is actually just one example of the learning delivery part of it. The second one that actually maybe I will talk one more so that you can actually have a good
answer. Sure. Please feel free. Yes.
Yeah. So the other one is actually, on one of the the construction is the biggest construction organization, of course, in Singapore. So over there, what do they do? It's actually really on-site learning and on-site workplace safety and health, all these things, right? So what they are doing is actually they are using XR, extended reality. Of course, extended reality is actually, it's not only just, augmented reality as well as also virtual reality, but it's more augmented reality that they're looking at, how it can be doing the testing of their, the processes of them doing or some of the different tasks. So of course, that organization coming into InnoPlus, we don't expect them to actually using 200,000 to actually complete everything. We say that it's the low-hanging fruit. Identify one or two of the main challenges that you have, and these 200,000 can fulfill in build this prototype out. So build this up, then after that test it. When it's useful, then you further get the funding from anywhere else to actually further improve on it. So that is actually what they did. They actually used the AR, XR, extended reality to actually to really do the testing, to do the equipment, not really equipment, it's the workplace safety training that they're actually doing. So that is actually another of the solution that I'm actually that just want to share with you.
That's amazing.
There are others, but I don't want to actually talk too much, because if not,
sure.
It will be. Yeah.
There are countless examples of
Yes,
to share for sure. Because that was actually the first thing that came to my mind. Hey, how about virtual reality? Because I bought myself an Oculus sometimes back. I was like, this environment could be used to simulate a 5-step process to build a scaffold for workplace safety. And if you miss one, in the virtual environment, you'll fall.
No, but Ching Hong, bear in mind, over here, that's why we say that it's not about the tech, it's about the learning. Imagine if, let's say, how can you actually make use that it can be accessed by as many people as possible, yet people learn. And in the whole learning process, right, where is this gap that is trying to fill? It is definitely maybe physical training is still a need. But how this solution can actually fit into the the jigsaw puzzle, fill in this missing very important piece. That is actually what we are looking for. And then assessment is very important. You don't just do the video or do the AR or this thing and watch a video, everything. But in terms of how do you track the performance after going through this whole solution itself, that is actually what we are would like to emphasize as well. It's not because it's really, like I say, like it's the ROI, it's a KPI that the company is looking for, right?
Yes. So Zach doesn't want fluff. Yeah,
no.
that high-tech stuff and all that. Yeah, I'm sure they do have a place in a certain part of the process. For example, where you mentioned you have maybe 3 people coming in for a test today, and the tester have just got to sit there waiting from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. while that thing could have been done remotely, as well as the case of the nurse that you mentioned at the A&E ward, which I found to be pretty amazing as well, because you can actually, who would imagine that natural language processing and mix up with even inflections in your voice, the tonality could actually amount to something. We always take something at face value of the verbal and the words and the content, but actually the part of the body language is missing, which is very, very interesting in that verbality, I think. Yeah, the verbal aspect of things. I'm not sure whether that's such a word.
Right. Neither do I.
Cool. Yeah. So I think this will
okay, there is one question. Yeah,
yes, Benny raised a very, very good question, because I think earlier when Zach raised the different examples, they all come from different industries, and it does appear that there needs to be very specific solutions created for those industries, and it does make sense, because if those industries get that implemented, it could potentially be a market that goes up even to globally, right? So Benny Tan's question is this challenge industry specific? I'm not sure which challenge he's referring to, but I am going to assume that it's the proctoring one, right?
No, let me actually maybe Benny, if let's say I try to answer your question, I would think that Benny's question is actually on all 3. Yes, correct. It's actually on all 3, and that is the part. Because why all 3? Because it's as Benny, you have correctly pointed out, it shouldn't be so industry specific. Why? Because we are looking at the main thing is learning innovation. It covers all areas. So it covers all areas. Of course, you can, but by saying so, it's so wide. Then after that, how do I zoom in? That's why I mentioned already, what is the pain point that you want to address? So as long as you can actually define which is this pain point in which industry, and what is the prospect, what is actually the demand out there? Imagine, for example, if let's say I'm talking about this, let's say metaverse. If let's say I'm building this thing for maybe, I'm not too sure whether in this specific industry. Imagine by introducing this solution, it can impact millions of people in this industry, and it can be further scaled into other industries. So that is something that we would hope to have. Of course, your solution, first of all, you zoom in on one of the practical, industry challenge. Then after that, you can broaden it. That is always what we are always asking, challenge owner as well as solution providers to actually look for. Yes, so it's not really industry specific. If I answer yours well enough, if not, feel free to ask me any question.
Right. So Benny does have another question. He's saying that if I'm focusing on developing sales competency, is that too focused or too broad?
No. Okay, I can quote you one more example. One of the example which we have is there's this big IT solution company. Okay, they are the challenge owner. Then after that, they come in with saying that the sales enablement department of them. Okay, which is really a challenge. Salespeople is always out on the ground. Okay, they don't have time for training. Yeah, what training? Don't tell me like I'm just going out for my deals and everything. So how are you going to train all these people? So that is actually, the solution come in with a sales enablement platform using chatbot. Of course, chatbot is not just chatbot. What is this uniqueness of this chatbot? I won't further elaborate on this thing. So that is something which is they win the solution. And right now, this big MNC is actually rolling this sales enablement platform not only to Singapore, it's also to other region of other sales team in the whole world. That is something. That's why sales enablement, yeah, it can be. Just feel free to actually come in. That can be one of the challenge or industry area. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you very much. And of course, sales is sort of like a function. So we can apply that across all the different industries. And I think Zach pointed out a point that was very enlightening, like starting from the ground, identify real problems, and then looking at where you can potentially scope it and scale it to. And I think that's the magic of, how big do you want to go with that? Yeah.
That's why I said start off with like, when you're doing a startup pitch. When you do a startup pitch, what is this pain point? This pain point will be something which is you really want to just put it there, identify, and you sell this idea to the investors. That is actually what we are looking for. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Benny says, thank you. That will be what
Benny.
he's focusing on, sales enablement. Good to know. So yeah, there's this one taker right up on the Q&A. I'm sure much more on the OIP platform. And of course, if there are no further questions, of course, we thank Zach for his time and to bring about the different challenges.